The theme for this year, 2023, is living out loud. It puts a smile on my face every time I say that. The focus for the month of June is embracing self-care. And today's message is balancing grief and joy. And it will be given by our wonderful spiritual director, Charlene Banks. We are so glad that you took some time out of your day to join us. So we'll officially kick off our service with this welcoming video. Please join us as we create our sacred space. We set our intentions of deepening.
What's happening? It's not doing it? All right, one moment. Let me stop sharing. You know, we try new things and new things don't always go great. Let's try this again. All righty. Tamara, you are beautiful. He's like, I know, right? Okay, let's try one more time. Let me know if you can hear it.
Into our awareness and practice of our 5 pillars of spiritual living by lighting this candle in our virtual world. Our first pillar is sacred study, represented by the divine quality of truth. We use this pillar to recognize the importance of an open mind and the power of our minds. The second pillar is affirmative prayer, represented by the divine quality power. This pillar honors the power of prayer in our daily lives. Our third pillar is meditation and the divine quality of peace. This pillar reminds us of the importance of meditation and the peace we feel when we quiet our minds. The fourth pillar is circulation and the divine quality of life. We know that the great law of circulation works in our lives. As we give, so shall we receive. And the fifth pillar is sacred service and the divine quality of love. This pillar affirms our call to be of service to our world as we see through the eyes of love. Let us close our eyes as we bless this sacred space and our time together. As we weave each of these pillars of spiritual living into our service today, may they deepen our own spiritual practices of study, prayer, meditation, circulation, and service, expanding our minds and our hearts to the 5 divine qualities of truth, power, peace, life, and love. We also bless everyone who made our service possible today and everyone in attendance. May the energy of love that is generated here bless everyone abundantly, and so it is. All right, now it's time for our meditation. And before we dive into meditation, I wanted to do 2 things. One, I forgot to include in our opening that if you have any prayer concerns or celebrations that you would like us to include later in the service, when we do our affirmative prayer, which we call spiritual mind treatment, please, please, please add those to the chat, and Charlene will make sure that we include that when we end our service and have our affirmative prayer. So I wanted to remind you about that. The second thing is, it seems like so often when I do our meditation, I start off with a little explanation of how I chose the meditation for today. So a while back, I can't remember exactly when, but when I was our speaker, I mentioned something called the cookie jar method. And this is an idea, a concept that was created by David Goggins. And what the cookie jar method is that we know that life isn't perfect, and sometimes we face some very difficult challenges and some struggles. I tell my students, no one has the perfect life. It's absolutely impossible. You're going to have some problems and struggles in life, but that's okay. They make great stories. And we have to remember that when we're going through a difficult time, we've had difficult times before and we survived those. So we're going to survive this difficult time too. And David Goggins came up with this idea of calling these difficult times in our lives cookies. And we put them in our cookie jar. They're just experiences that we can collect. And the more cookies that we put in our jar, the more we can pull out when we're going through a difficult time. And we can remind ourselves, hey, I've been in a tight situation before. I've had some bad days. I've had some big challenges that I had to overcome. And somehow, through time and effort and determination and friends and family and faith, I made it. And he reminds us when we're facing those challenges to just go into those memories, which he calls cookies, and pull them out so that we can persevere through those bad times. So that's my little explanation of what we're going to do in our meditation today. I'm going to have you recall some difficult times in your lives, and we're going to focus on how you made it through, how you became stronger, wiser as a result. So here's where we start our official meditation. Cue music. Thank you, Charlene. So I want you just to relax in your chair. Take a deep breath. That always feels so good. Release. Maybe shrug your shoulders a little bit. Just make sure that you are at ease. We can't go into meditation when we're all clenched up. We have to learn how to relax our body first before we relax our mind. Just take another breath. Inhale. And exhale. Let's do that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. All right, now we're ready to begin. So we're going to go and find your cookies, right? What were the difficult times in your life? I want you to think back to something that maybe you experienced in your childhood, maybe in your teens. Those are tumultuous years, aren't they? Maybe in your young adulthood. But go back in and just recall a time where you were really facing something that was very difficult, a challenge. It was difficult to find the light at the end of the tunnel. You didn't quite know how you got into the situation and how you were going to get out. Maybe faith was really low. Maybe you felt like you weren't supported by friends. Maybe you felt like this is never going to end. I just don't see a way out. Try to recall that without diving into it too deeply. Remember, it is the past, right? And we're in the now. But try to recall that time. And what we're doing is we're creating a cookie that you can put in your cookie jar. After 9/11, I was a teacher, and I had my students, when they returned to school the next day, we wrote some poems focusing on the tragedy of that day, the horror of that day. But then we wrote 9/12 poems, we call them, and we focused on how everyone was responding and helping and supporting. And for the first time in my life, I really felt like we were the United States, because we were joined, we were bonded, because we were all suffering. So what's your 9/12 part of this story? Think back to that moment that you just recalled in your past. And yes, it was so difficult, but what was the end result? What was the pearl? Did you become more compassionate? Did you become stronger, more self-aware? Did you realize, wow, I have an incredible strength that I didn't know I had? Did you develop empathy for others? Cookies are sweet. So what was the outcome? How were you a better person? We're all affected by the Canadian wildfires, right? And when there's a wildfire, everything burns, right? Everything's destroyed, but those ashes replenish the earth. How did you become replenished, stronger? And that's part of your cookie. That's part of your story. And you put that in your cookie jar so that the next time you're facing a difficult time, a difficult challenge, you can reach in. You can find that cookie and remind yourself, I'm a survivor. I made it through that. I can survive this. I can get through anything. I was toying around with doing one more, but here's what I'd like to do. I think that this really leads in with our message for today. So I want to remind you that that cookie jar is always yours. This visualization is something that you can always do. Once I learned about the cookie jar method, there's been a few times where I had to remind myself, you made it through that. You'll make it through this too. Keep going. You got this. So take a deep breath. Exhale. Hold on to the message of today's meditation as you gently return and join us for some music.
Use me, oh God, I stand for you, and here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. I used to think God is the sun, God is the sun, but God's so much more than the earth and the stars and all of creation. God is creator, all and all, leading us to shine its light as me, as you. So use me, oh God, I stand for you, and here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. All that I want you to do is command my hands. What must they do? Command my life, it's here for you. God is the love that heals all creation. God is creator, makes all things new, and God needs us to shine its light as me, as you. So use me, oh God, I stand for you, and here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. And God needs us to shine its light. God needs us to shine its light. God needs us to shine its light as me, so use me. Oh God, I stand before you, and here I abide, and you show me all that I must do. Show me all that I must do. Show me all that I must do.
Ooh, there, Renee at Mile High Baptist Church. Woo, Baptist Church. I'm laughing because it's not a Baptist church, but that song took me back. So, welcome, welcome. It is such a beautiful morning. And thank you, Tamara, for waking us up with such a wonderful, heartfelt meditation. It really took me back to those times when I had several cookies in the cookie jar. And I was thinking, what a great way to reframe that. I love David Goggins. He's this Marine who just teaches us that our mind gives up well before our bodies want to give up. And I think of him often when I'm at the gym and I want my body to do just 2 more reps. And my mind's like, but it's hard. And I say, well, it's probably just my body probably can. It's my mind that doesn't think I can. And so that's always what we're conditioning here. And that's why we call our teaching the science of the mind and spirit. And so here we are. Welcome. Good morning. And it's good to have a throwback song. And the reason I love that song, and it does remind me of Baptists just a little, not only because it was sung by such a soulful singer, but also the way they refer to God. I use air quotes, because you know that we can use any term for the divine. We can use the word the universe, or the allness, or the Atman, or Brahman, or we could use anything we want to get us into that divine, that energy, that there's something bigger happening right now. That bigness, that allness that created the entire universe is flowing throughout each and every being. It is us. It created us as us. It's expressing itself as us. And that's why she says God needs us to shine its light. And she says, like, command my hands. What must they do? And that's one of those things that if we don't sit down and consciously connect with who we really are inside, who we were meant to be, if we don't wake that up, then our hands, they're being commanded, but by whom? By whom? Who's telling us what to do every day? Who? I tell you what, I was answering a survey and I was like, if I answer this exactly correctly, you guys aren't going to believe me, because this shouldn't exist. Based on where I come from, who I am, what I look like, and what I do for a living, write software and teach people how to do it. I shouldn't exist. And so I fill it out honestly, but I know that I'm one of those red herrings. Or am I? Am I? Mainstream society will have us think that everyone of value is of a certain type. They're a certain body type, they're a certain height, weight, and skin color. They have a certain background. They speak a certain way. They're definitely cisgender. They were born with the genitals that defined their sexuality and their sexual preferences, and thou shalt not stray. If we were to stick with that mainstream message, a lot of us would be left out, cast out. And that's exactly what happens. When we're born into a world that tells us how we should be, and then we look in the mirror or we look in our hearts and we're like, that kind of doesn't describe me. I got a couple choices. I can pretend. Now, some things I can't pretend, like, I can't pretend not to be a Black woman, but I can pretend to be completely straight. I can do that. I can pretend, right? I won't let any other desires go into my conversation, because then I'm going to be an outsider. And then I won't be given opportunity. Turns out, what if everybody just stood up and said who they really were inside? Turns out a lot of us are along the spectrum. There's not as much crowding in the middle of that bell curve as we thought. It is truly a spectrum, and it is wide, and it is vast, and it is deep. And we get to occupy whatever angle of that spectrum that we fall on. Unapologetically, we show up, and we're fully ourselves in their faces even. And like Tamara and I say, oh, I'm not going to dim my light. Do you need to put on a pair of sunglasses? Because we're over it. That's not what's up, as the kids say. So what is up? What's going on? I mean, we're here talking about the divine and all the joy and the power and the peace that comes when we're one with the divine. But then something happens. 9/11, like Tamara was mentioning, that was a traumatic event. It was a group shared traumatic event, and we were all traumatized, and we still are. There are things that happen from small to, I got rejected from the person that I was flirting with, or I got turned down for that job, or somebody said I didn't look cute in these sneakers, all the way to, I just lost the love of my life. I just lost a parent, a pet, a cherished member of our community. It goes from the minuscule trauma to the grief that is so deep that we think we cannot get through it. And yet we're at church, so-called church. We're at our spiritual center, and we're talking about God being love and joy. And even Tamara's beautiful meditation of reaching back and turning traumatic events into a cookie, that kind of works if you reach way, way back. What if you're in the middle of it right now? It's not a cookie yet. It's not even batter. It's not even in the oven. It's still happening. How do you walk the line between joy, that's our birthright, and grief, because something terrible and unimaginable is happening right now? How can we walk that? Well, there are many who say that we need closure. Have you heard the term? Closure. It has been picking up speed ever since the 90s. I downloaded a book on Kindle. It's called Closure: The Rush to End Grief and What It Costs Us. And I love that book. I love the title. I was all over it, reading all through this book. It's really great because it helped put into context the rush that people often feel when they lose a loved one and the funeral's over, all the baked dishes have been consumed, and then I'm thinking of a widow, the rest of her life, she's now sitting in a room that's no longer filled with the husband in this scenario, and everybody thought it's over, he's buried, or they may think, you've had a year to grieve. Now put on some bright colors and get outside and let's go shake our booties or whatever. I don't know. The thing is, nobody can tell us the time frame that it takes to grieve. And here's what I'm here to tell us, because I talk to myself. I say tell us because I'm listening to. Here's what I'm here to tell us, is that in the moment of grief, in that moment, in each moment of pure grief, it's never pure grief. It's, if you think about it and sit with it, that's the trick, sitting with it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sitting with the grief has moments of, I don't want to say joy, but it's something that feeds us. It's got the nutritious ashes that Tamara talked about, that when a forest burns down, those ashes are nutritious to the soil, and what emerges after that is beautiful. There's something in sitting in grief that is nurturing, it's deep, and it's loving, and it's so comforting if we do it, if we sit in it. In fact, Richard Rohr, some of our favorite people here love Richard Rohr. He says the great wisdom traditions are trying to teach us that grief isn't something to run from. It's a liminal space, a time of transformation. And if you remember, liminal means transformative. A liminal space is what the caterpillar goes into. It's that goo that then forms the butterfly. That's a liminal space, because there are liminal cells that are going and becoming something else. When we're in the middle of grief, we sink into that liminal space. And that's when the magic happens. But we have to sit. One more quote here, and I'll tell you about what happens when you don't sit. Straight from my personal cookie jar. All right, listen. Grief has a very holy purpose. This is from Secrets of Divine Love by A. Helwa. Okay, she says, grief has a very holy purpose. Through our feelings of loss, we actualize true gratitude. When we begin to see the depth of our grief as reflecting the depth of love that we felt, the holes that a loved one's spirit once filled, they go from triggers of sadness and regret to altars of gratitude. The children's book character Winnie the Pooh beautifully illustrates this when he says, "How lucky am I to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." So grief has a holy purpose, that we actualize gratitude for what we had that we then lost. And the reason why it's important to really just sit in the grief instead of pushing it down and pretending. And, you know, plenty of us do this. I do this still to this day. I will hurry through the loss of something. If it's a contract or the loss of an illusion, let's just say, the loss of an illusion of how things might turn out, losing that is a grieving process. And a lot of times we rush ourselves through and don't allow ourselves to sit. And then years back, I remember I must have been 27 years old, and I was in the throes of sort of an eating disorder. You know, it was horrible. It was terrible. I don't recommend it. It involved a lot of binge eating and a lot of purging and nothing else. Oh, I had a full-time job and I was going to school. I somehow got that done. But when I wasn't doing those things, I was fully blown in this disease. And I remember just being so lost. So just, let's just call it was dark. It was very dark. And I just felt like I had no way out. And there were a string of circumstances I won't go into in detail. I'm sure I'll write a book about it. But let's just say that God, in her divine wisdom, lined up a set of dominoes, stacked them up like 40 deep. And then the first one went, and then they all went. And then it ended up with me sitting in a room in Southern California with like 14 other little anorexia, bulimia girls. And we were healing each other. We were healing ourselves through this 12-step program. And the way I found it was impossible. There's no way that would have been, it had to be miracle. I mean, I could tell you, but it would take too long. So the point is that when we are going through something, sometimes we want to go around it, dodge it, don't do anything about it. Turns out in those meetings, here's what I found out. That the reason I was doing all this binging and purging was because I had some unresolved trauma that I was trying to work through. And I was not willing to sit still and feel bad. The moment I sat still, my mind said, get something to eat. But then my vanity said, oh, but then you're not going to be cute. So then my mind said, well, get rid of it after you eat it. And this will keep her busy, because what we can't do is have her sit down and process what's really going on. It was brilliant. I have to say, the first part of my healing was writing a letter to bulimia and telling it, thank you for keeping me alive, but I got this. I no longer need this repetitive, mind-numbing, disassociating, isolating, and terrifying experience, which then my therapist told me, it's kind of suicidal. You're just taking your time. I was like, what? All these things happening, all these things converging to teach me something. What did I learn? Sit still in the midst of it. And they taught me it takes about 40 to 70 seconds for fully blown grief to move through you. But if you keep interrupting it, you create habits that last a lifetime. Think about that. 40 to 70 seconds of true grief, of that that soul racking pain that makes you just cry your eyes out and snot all over somebody or yourself. And the ugly cry thing, it doesn't last forever. But the fear is that it might, or that we don't have what it takes to get through it. And so we dodge it. And we create habits and we create rituals that aren't good for us. Think about every time someone's self-medicating, they're either at the shopping mall, spending money they don't have, they're at the bar drinking what they shouldn't drink, and whoo, that one leads to decisions that you shouldn't be making. It's all terrible. I remember thinking when I was in the midst of my bulimia, well, at least it's not drugs. I mean, I could get pulled over and no one's going to arrest me for having Twinkies, but it's still terrible. It's a spectrum. It's a degree thing. But everyone in that room of the girls that were we were helping each other get over it, going through these 12 steps. We figured out that we were just avoiding something. There's something terrible that we're trying not to face. And that's each of our separate journeys, but we were together for each other's growth. And isn't that the beauty in it? And the love and the connection and the joy that was created in a community of like-minded people. That's what's powerful. Nobody judges anybody else because is it your turn to be vulnerable because I'm next? We each have some skin in the game and we each love each other through the appearance. What appears to be negative is really, I feel, it's the divine trying to give everybody a few bumps. A few bumps. And here's what I mean by that. If you've ever been rock wall climbing, a smooth, perfect wall is a terrible thing to climb. It's a terrible thing. You can't do anything with it. Even if you look at trying to get two surfaces to stick, they have to be a little bit rough and tacky so that they'll hold. And I feel like the reason we have things wrong with us, who says? But the reason we have these is so that others can find a way to attach with us, to connect with us, to cling on to. So we have some grooves and they go out where you go in, and then it's just, it's awesome. That's why we get to be in these groups of vulnerability. This is what we want. And remember, sitting in that grief, it doesn't mean that it's going to be forever. So there's another thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm glad I still have a few minutes, because the other topic here is about closure. Because in the midst of grief, people think that, I'll be okay once I get closure. And the closure that they seek is not guaranteed to bring about any better feelings. The activity that you'll look online, you'll see on TV, you'll read it in the news, and you'll read books. Every story has some ending when you're reading fiction, because that's how stories work. But our lives aren't always like that. Closure, for example, the 9/11 example that Tamara gave. Everyone wanted closure there was something about removing all of the debris and the remains from where they were, moving them someplace else. And people got mad at Mr. Giuliani because he wanted it moved. They're not going to get closure, they said, if you don't leave it where it is, so that other people said, no, remove it so that we can put a memorial up. So that will give us closure. And then there's the people who wanted closure by let's go to war and jump to conclusions. And there's others who said, well, if we go to war, that doesn't. Everybody thinks that closure is something different. Let me give you the 6 ways that closure is sold to us by society. 1, closing a chapter. They'll say, that chapter has closed. Some of us have finished jobs and they're moving on to the next job. It comes with grief, but also joy. So you got that bittersweet thing going on. And that they'll say, you have to close the chapter. When you close your chapter, they say, you got to do all your unfinished tasks. You've got to resolve the court case. Like if you don't do it, you'll not have closed the chapter, and then you can't have closure. The underlying message is, and therefore you can't be happy. It's impossible to be happy if there's no closure. That's what we're being fed. Let me give you another one. The type of closure might be, we'll remember, in remembrance. And then by remembering, they have a fear that if I forget, then I might let them get cozy. So the way I have closure in this scenario, I'm going to remember what you did, or I'm not going to let other people forget. I'm not going to let this just get absorbed by the news cycle. I'm going to make sure everyone remembers. So I'm going to bring it up a lot. That's some people's closure. Or the opposite. I'm going to forget it. Never mention the name again. Don't say a word about it. And if we don't mention it, then it didn't happen. That's closure for some people. And especially for other people's pain. It's hard to deal with other people's pain if we haven't dealt with our own. So when someone brings up something that's painful, then you get the, girl, you're not over that yet. How you not? It's been 2 years. Excuse me, was there a time? Is there an expiration on hurtness? Like, I don't know. I don't know if some of us will ever get over or forget. But it seems like it's convenient for those around us to want us to forget. So there must be something going on with that kind of closure talk, which then leads me to 2 options for if you don't want to forget. One, you can get closure by getting even. That's another type. Oh, I'm going to get even. And we all know an eye for an eye leads to everybody being blind. So I don't know if getting even is a great idea. And then there's the whole karma thing. I don't recommend getting even. Maybe pulling up a chair and watching with a bag of popcorn as the person just goes about their life and gets what they get, maybe. But I wouldn't cause negative events to happen to people. That's not good. And then forgiving is the other option. Getting even or forgiving. Now, forgiving is simple when you, depending on what side it is. Like if you are the one who did wrong, you could confess and then say, oh, I have closure because I've confessed my sins or whatever it is that you thought you did. Sins is such a loaded word, but confessed when I missed the mark. Or shame. A lot of times confessing, you think, oh, maybe I'm trying to end the shame I feel. And a lot of times forgiving will do that too. So depending on the side that you were, if you were on the side of the perpetrator, you'd want to confess and then request forgiveness. And then, a lot of times that's just 2 sides of the same coin. And whether or not that brings closure is up to the person at hand. All of these are different ways that are being sold to us as society. Here's how you get closure. But the underlying myth is that closure is possible. Closure, usually what they mean is healing, and you're never going to be the same as you were before because things move forward. The evolution happens for a reason. And we don't expect a traumatic event to not change us. We expect traumatic events to change us. And we want to hope to coax it to bring out something bigger, deeper, more useful, more amazing, bring something out of us that wasn't there before as a response to the stimulus. But to think that closure means, and we can go back to the way we were before, that will never happen. And so I hope I've helped stimulate some thoughts in your minds about what it is and what it isn't when it comes to dealing with grief, running from grief, and then choosing to sit still in the grief. Because it is my conviction that if we have sat with our grief and we know that it is giving as well as it's actually creating grooves that go deep into us, that then we can be available to others, then we wouldn't tell ourselves a story about needing so-called closure, and that we would start to embrace this as just part of being human. And then it helps us with our compassion muscle, because when other people come up to us or come into our presence who are having a similar experience, then they too, we could feel, oh, I know, I'm here for you. You can feel a sense of compassion with them. We're not trying to erase it. We're trying to embrace it. And so Ernest Holmes says that we remember everything. He says that the body remembers all. And I'll end with this. The body remembers everything that happens to us, even from when we were very young up until now. We may not consciously remember, but we remember. And so as we create that space for ourselves to become more in tune with what's going on inside of ourselves, we allow our lessons to unfold. We allow it to make us a more multifaceted person, a more loving and not judgmental person. Speaking of loving, Loving Day is tomorrow. Loving Day, June 12th. Oh, were you aware? Loving. It's the day that June 12th is the day that the U.S. Supreme Court in 1967 unanimously ruled in favor of Mildred and Richard Loving, making states' laws against interracial marriage unconstitutional. Let's hope that that law stays put. Got to get the plug in. All right, you guys, let's go within. I'm out of time. You know, I had so much more to say, but and let me check to see if there are any prayer requests now. Okay, so let's go within and end this on a beautiful affirmative prayer for what we discussed today. We know that there's only one power and one life, and that power, that life, the universal good, that is known as Spirit, as Mother, Father, God. It is known as the infinite, the one. No matter what you call it, there's only that energy, that power, that conscious, aware energy that is each and every one of us. And this energy moves through and as each and every being on this planet and beyond. Yet it's not absorbed by it. It's bigger than its creation. It is infinite potentiality waiting to express, to evolve as us through our hands, our feet, our mouths, our minds. It's happening through us, as us. And so in this awareness, I speak my word that we have access to all of the knowledge and power of the divine because we are one with it. In this very vessel that we live and breathe and move and have our beingness, we also have the power to speak conditions into existence. And so I speak my word right here that I know that each and every one of us is unfolding to the beautiful, effervescent being that was intended by the original design. And that anything unlike our pure essence just falls away. It's no longer attached to us because it wasn't ours in the first place. Any sense of lack, any sense of disease, any sense of failing, any sense of not enoughness, any sense of anything that's not like the divine, it falls away because there's no truth. There's no truth behind it. And we know that what is true stays, that it cannot be undone. And this is our divine inheritance of abundance, of joy, of peace, and of love. We are that place that we were looking for. And so I know that this is true, and I just simply release my word into the law, knowing that the law always says yes to my creative word. So I let it go, I let it be, and so it is. Ashe. Let's hear from Jamie Lula. Here we go.
Thank you. So grateful to my mile-high home, my home away from home, for the way that you've held me for this last week. I just laid my brother to rest on Tuesday. He passed 9 days ago. And I couldn't have found a better place to come and just be held. So thank you. I'm grateful for the healing. There's a healing going on. There's a healing going on. Yeah, yeah. current runs deep, baptized in the one where there's no separation and the light is always seen. Honoring all our differences and love will set us free. Oh, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I say, oh, you rock my soul. I say, oh, you rock my soul. I see the blessings of the past. It's time to re-qualify. Let not forget, but learn to forgive. God knows that we gotta try. It's my responsibility to heal the wounds in me. Compassion, faith, and hope, and love, and truth will set us free. Oh, yeah, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. There's a healing. Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I say, oh, you rock my soul. I say, oh, you rock my soul. Oh, Lord, I said, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I say, oh, you rock my soul. I say, oh, you rock my soul. Oh, Lord, I said, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I said, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I said, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I said, oh, you rock my soul. I say, oh, you rock my soul. Oh, Lord, I said, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I said, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I said, Mother, Father, God, there's a healing going on. I said, oh, you rock my soul. I say, oh, you rock my soul. Oh, I say, oh, you rock my soul. Oh, I say, oh, you rock my
Wow. You expect me to be able to speak after that? Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Charlene, you knocked it out of the ballpark. Thank you so much for your message. And man, if that song doesn't stay with you today, folks, I don't know. I don't think you were really listening. That was incredible. Woo! Well, the slide tells me that now is the time that we bless the donations that are shared with us today. At CSL Leesburg, we believe in the law of circulation, so we are a tithing community. The donations that are shared with our center bless everyone, those who give and those who receive. That's the law of circulation, folks. So your donation helps our center, our home organization, as well as organizations that support our vision of creating a world that works for everyone. And I love, Charlene, that you told us about Loving Day tomorrow. We are always looking for suggestions for organizations that we should consider. So please go to our website and click the give button and let us know if you know of an organization that meets our vision, helping to create a world that works for everyone. So look at the screen. There's so many ways that you can give. I'm sure that you found one that works for you already, and we thank you so much. Now, please join me in the blessing of our gifts. The presence of spirit within me blesses everyone I meet, tends to heal everything I touch, brings gladness into the life of everyone I contact. Therefore, I am a blessing to myself, to humankind, and to the day in which I live. Boy, is that even more important during our month of embracing self-care. That's a good one. All right, folks, let's do some announcements. So we have some classes that are starting to happen, and they are happening.
Oh, there's a typo on the.
Did you hear my
Sorry.
pause? They are happening soon.
Soon. Here,
So
go ahead. Keep talking. I'll fix it as you talk.
and then you just do what you need to do. We
Yeah,
have
go
our
ahead.
foundations. There is a prerequisite. You have to have one of our foundations classes first. Check with us if you're not sure if you qualify or not. In the historical foundations, we explore our roots, folks. We didn't just come up with this stuff, and Ernest Holmes didn't just come up with this stuff one day. There are roots, historical roots. There's a wonderful thread of truth that runs through so many writings, and we explore Emerson, just to name one biggie that pops into my mind, and we explore what were the readings, the thoughts, the mystics, the people that contributed and discovered along the way and led us to where we are today. It's a 10-week class. I believe it's starting tomorrow night, right, Shar?
Yes.
Okay, that one's on. And it'll be from 7 to 10 right here on our little Zoom link. Now, the other class that we're having is Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. There is no prerequisite. I've taken this, I've taught it. The title says it all. Change your thinking. It all starts here, guys. Once you change your thinking, all of a sudden, look at her. Look at her. Isn't she magical? Thinking, and you change your life. And that class is going to start on Sundays right here on our little Zoom link. And it's starting June 25th. So we're giving you a couple weeks to say, yeah, I'm going to do this. And you know what? I'm going to challenge you. Okay. Charlene doesn't even know what I'm about to say. I want you to bring a friend. I want you to invite somebody else. There's somebody in your life who you know needs this message as well as you. Change your thinking, change your life. You've got a friend who just seems like they're stuck. They're in a position, they haven't found their cookie jar, they're struggling with something, and bring a friend, And I'm going to throw out that too. I'm going to throw out this, Charlene, bear with me. You jump in if I'm saying something wrong. But
no, you got this.
Bring a friend to the first class. Just bring a friend to the first class. And if they don't like it, they don't have to come again. But if they like it, then they start paying and then they officially join the class. But make that first class, bring a friend, see if they want to try it. Let them dip their toe into this way of thought, because it really is life-changing, guys. I can testify to that clearly. And I know Charlene can too. And many of you are joining us. You know you felt the change in your life once you started embracing this way of thinking. Exactly. All right. I better stop because
no, you did good. Keep going.
Thank you. Bring a friend. Bring a friend. All right, folks, it's now time for our closing affirmation. And before we do this, I want to remind you that our Leadership Council will be meeting at 1 o'clock, but we have a little time to hang out and we like to do our pearls. If there's anything that you'd like to share, you'd like to question, you'd like to comment on from today's service or the music or the meditation, please hang out with us. We check in with each other. We love each other. We support each other. And we'd love it if you can stay. And if you're on Facebook, just come to our Zoom link and on our website and join us. It's a fun little coffee hour that we just hang out with each other and share whatever we got from the message, what really resonated with us. So I invite you to do that if you can. If you can't, then we send you off with our love and blessings after we do this closing affirmation. All right, guys, do I have to tell you? Turn your mics on because I want to hear you. Okay, you ready? Repeat after me. I am love.
I am love.
I am love.
You're making me smile. All right, look at someone in the room with you. It might be a furry love companion. It might be a loved one. It might be a friend. Or maybe you're just by yourself and you want to just point back at the camera. Repeat after me. You are love.
You are love.
Love. You too, Silas. He's right here at my feet. All right. And now it's time that we do our little love sprinkles. We remind ourselves that it is all love. Here we go. It's all
love.
Oh, so much for joining us here today. If you can stay, please stay. And if you can't, we love you and we send you off with our blessing.